What's up, boys and girls? I wanted to take a moment and go through the Dolly Zoom test facility footage together, so we all have a better understanding kind of what's going on and also what to look for. And I'll also do a quick, super quick kind of recap of what the Dolly Zoom even is with this bad boy. For our understanding here, I want you to kind of picture it this way. We're going to compare everything relative to the foreground. Relative to the foreground, the background, when it's really, really close, the background looks smaller. And as we move it away, relative to the foreground, the background starts to look relatively wider than what it looked like before. Now this is important because picture the circle being the amount of travel the muzzle is moving through during its course of fire. We put that together. Watch how this plays out. There it is close, the foreground relative to the background, and as we move it further away, try to keep my angles together here. You see how the size of the circle compared to this forend again starts kind of evening out. It becomes relatively larger. This may look a little bit creepy. Apologies in advance for any nightmares, but check this out. When I come really, really close to the camera, you can't really see much of my ears, right? But watch what happens as I move away from the camera. The sides of my face and my ears kind of start coming into view, just by virtue of a change of position, of perspective. Okay. So first off, we're starting at 50. I want you to focus on the size and the relative size and position of the front sight post, and I want you to also notice the sides of the housing for the scope as they change. You see? So we're comparing the size of so again, compare the front sight post, the size of it there compared to here. Its position change, and also the size of the front sight post change. We can also see how, again, different parts of the housing start coming into view. And also we have kind of other things related to the weapon. Again, the foreground dials here compared to the throw lever here. Again, watch how those change. Okay, here goes the next one. So again, we're not going to be able to see a front sight post, but we can see the flashlight down here, and we can see the top backup side. We can also see other parts of the housing. Pay attention to how those, just like I was doing with my head earlier, how you could see my ears. Pay attention to how this happens here. You see the difference? So there's it on 50. 50 is here. 75 here. And I'll leave this next one for you. See if you can notice those same things in this one. And one more. And this is an interesting one too. Again, look at the it's in relation to each other, right? The mount screws on the side, the housing. So there's a change. Now these next ones will be with what I'm going to call Dolly Zoom off. You want to get super technical, as I've kind of described elsewhere. It's technically still on, but just not in the way, not in the way I'm trying to illustrate for our purposes here. So here we go at 50. Watch for these same things. What should we expect to see, right? Just going to freeze frame it here and try to understand what do we expect to see here. If the position of the camera is moving further back, we will expect to see objects in the foreground toward the muzzle end become larger and relative to the forend, relative to things in the foreground, like the charging handle. So let's see what happens. You see? If anything, it was kind of back. It seemed to be a little bit backwards, right? If anything, the charging handle got a little bit wider compared to the objects, compared to the attachments and stuff at the forend. Let's see it again. So that's one thing that tells us a position shift. Another thing I want you to see is kind of maybe it's the more subtle stuff that's hard to catch, but it's really good to look at. Let's look at his glove right here, okay? I want you to see that the stitching on the glove. Right now you can't really see anything about any of the stitching that goes into the webbing on the palm or anything. You pretty much just see that the thumb. Well, watch what happens as we move through this. You see like areas down here, parts of the wrist become more visible. Yeah. And you can also kind of just see kind of this this gradual, what appears to be kind of like a stretching of the weapon a little bit, right? And that's kind of a distortion caused by just normal field of view adjustments. But like you're saying, if you want to be super precise and technical with this, there are also position shifts that are occurring too, not just focal length adjustments or FOV adjustments or zoom adjustments, however you want to call it. There's also a position change. And granted, some of these differences could be due to just different positions relative to the idle animation that's going on. But again, there's more to it than that. If you do this by yourself, side by side with compare idle animations, again, you can see that there are perspective changes that indicate a position shift. Okay, and this one, I'll leave it for you. See if you can see. Did you see it? Let's go through it again. So good things to look out for is, again, compare foreground objects to background objects. So the good things to look for would be this, the position of this attachment here relative to, say, the rear mounting screw. It's more subtle. You could also compare the dial on the side here to the attachment. There's a lot of the different things you can pick out to see it out for yourself. Okay, and here's where I start showing them side by side, so we can see this kind of in action. So again, what we're going to see here, it's very interesting, is we have 50 field of view on the left, 75 field of view on the right. Now again, if we want to be technical, if we want to be super technical, there are already position shifts just from this position, and we can see this again if we compare foreground objects to background objects. Position the attachment here relative to other things surrounding it, compared to the attachment here compared to other things surrounding it. Go through it again. And here, when we get to the magnified optic, that's when we see kind of the effects of a more extreme dolly zoom being applied. Because again, look at the difference of this top sight. The backup sight here is much smaller compared to here. You can't see near as much on the 50. We can't see near as much of the surrounding of the housing compared to here. And also we see relative positions are different of the attachment on each of these, right? So again, this indicates that the vantage point of the camera that's responsible for rendering the weapon model is different from the left versus the right. Now there's one more really interesting difference here that I'm going to try to highlight for us. I'm going to put this on slow motion here. And this is a really tricky one to catch, but what I want you to try to see is the different path of the camera and the weapon as it takes position behind the sight. So let's focus on that left one first. There we go. Let's see it again. You see how it looks kind of just like it's a gradual kind of going down a very smooth trajectory, right? Like it's just a bird kind of swooping in behind the sight. You see that? Now let's compare it to the right side. So now let's watch the right one. You see? For that first little bit, right here, we can see that the trajectory, the travel path of the camera is different. So you see how here you can start seeing some of the railing. You can see kind of the actual angle of the weapon's a little bit different as it kind of comes in for a smooth landing behind the sight picture. It's a tough one to wrap your mind around because two things are happening at once. Again, it's kind of all kind of melting together, right? So you have this, as the position is being adjusted, the field of view is also being adjusted. They're both kind of coming in tandem. So that's what makes it kind of so trippy and hard to notice. Okay, let's go for the last one. And same thing, we can see here the front sight post, the housing. And even for the stationary position, we can see a difference. This will be, again, if we focus on the stitching of the glove relative to the mounting bolts, relative to the mounting screws. So you see the stitching of the hand down here kind of cuts below the mounting screw, whereas the hand over here is relatively much more forward from this vantage point, right? The stitching of the glove kind of starts cutting into the mounting screw back here. There's also slight differences you'll see with, again, things in the foreground compared to things in the background. So if we're going to watch this again in slow-mo, let's try to catch the, again, the difference of the camera path. And then as it comes out of the scope, that shows it quite well. So again, to get to this relatively close to the same ending sight picture, there's a difference in the path that the camera takes and maybe also that the weapon's taking. I mean, these two kind of flow together in tandem, right? And again, one of the things that makes this kind of trippy is that there are essentially kind of two things going on at the same time. We have what we could maybe understand as maybe being like the real position of the weapon in the world that's doing its recoil, and that is what is informing where the weapon's actually aimed and where the bullets are traveling once they leave the barrel, okay? But kind of the sneaky thing is kind of behind the scenes, so we have this one going on, but we kind of also have this stunt double version of the weapon, okay? Which is the weapon as it is seen by the camera that is responsible for rendering the weapon. And that's the camera that's doing this kind of mind-bending dolly zoom effect. And that's what makes them appear to be out of sync. Because you're going to have the reticle of the weapon is going to follow the real weapon. Let's call it the real weapon that's there. While the camera that's responsible for rendering the weapon and displaying the weapon is showing it with a dolly zoom effect, which, as we were talking about earlier, will relatively enlarge things that occur in the foreground. And that's why in the examples I kind of keep coming back to an overlay, and I'll see if I can maybe create that again here for us. An overlay of this versus this. All right, so that's it. Let me know. Am I getting warmer, getting colder? Any more aha moments coming out from this? Do you see how these are going to start juking and jiving together? Again, we're going to Eli 5 this. Every single one of you watching this, you can get this. You can understand this. It sounds all this complex and fancy moving parts. It's very, very simple. It's position, which dictates perspective. Field of view, which dictates how large the object. Plus we have the cool black magic that goes on with different cameras. Yeah, I can see how it's clear as mud, hey? Let's keep going with it though. Come on. Come on. We can do it. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Bring your friends into this. Let them see if they make sense of it. Maybe they can talk you through it. Maybe you can look at this together. Come on. We got this. We got this.